Hi everybody, I'm Catherine Korostoff from Research Rockstar, and today we are going to continue talking about data. And I'd like to continue a conversation that we've been having recently about how we make sure we do a good job of objectively matching our clients' needs, that is, the specific research and insights needs they have, with the right methodology. Because these days, in professional market research and customer insights work, we have a lot of methodologies to pick from. Long gone are the days where every project was either a survey or a focus group or a set of in-depth interviews. We now have more than 20 options. And so it's important for us to have some discipline about how we make sure that we do a great job of matching our clients' needs with specific options. So I'm going to reintroduce the framework that we've been using in these discussions, and I will put the link to this in today's notes as well. This is a framework that we're using here at Research Rockstar with our students in our courses to help people with this exact issue. And so this framework is maybe familiar to you. And if you're listening to this on audio only, please do go to the link and access the framework when you get a chance. So with this framework, what we've been talking about is making sure that we start with our clients' questions. So what is that goal-centric objective, right? So what is their key question that is going to really meet their needs for this specific market research or customer insights project we may be working on? And with this model, what we do is we say, let's have a discipline around understanding what the client's question is. And before we immediately say, okay, given this objective, here's the right methodology, let's stop, take a pause, and look at, given the specific question, the specific objective and information need our client has, is this a project that would be best met through a discovery methodology, an experiment methodology, a measurement, or a prediction methodology? And depending on what that is, depending on what you choose, then you can pick the right options. So, for example, if I have a project where I know it's about discovery, then I can go down to my Discover category, and these are some of the options, not all of them, but some of the common options we have in professional research to discover things like customer attitudes and behaviors. Today, I'd like to specifically talk about the category of measurement. So there are a lot of cases in professional research where we really need to measure something. We need to measure customer attitudes. We need to measure customer behaviors, either past behaviors or even expected future behaviors. We need to understand that measurement perhaps for an entire population or target market of interest. Or we may be taking measurements so that we can compare and see how different attitudes or behaviors vary across groups, for example, by gender or employment status or geography, etc. Now, if you take a look at what we have here for our options in measurement, you'll see we do have a lot of options. Now, in the past, if we wanted to measure, we often would default to doing survey research. And that's because, frankly, for a long time, that was our best way to get data. Up until 20 years ago, companies didn't have things like CRM databases, e-commerce databases, Google Analytics, right? So a lot of the types of data that organizations have now are really new, but they're awesome for taking certain types of measurements. So when we're talking about a project where we know we need to measure customer attitudes or behaviors, one of the things we have to really think about is, what is the right data source for this? Should we rely on surveys, or should we rely on other methods to collect that data or to mine the data that already exists? And really what this comes down to is a big question that we have to ask ourselves as researchers. And that is, when is it best to rely on self-reported data for measuring customer attitudes and behaviors? And when is it best to use some of these other data sources for measurement? It does seem that there are a lot of cases where we can leverage existing databases now. So if we are doing research where we need to understand what types of promotions are most effective, or we want to see whether or not promotion option A is going to get more desirable behavior than promotion option B, well, we may actually have past data where we can start to look at that, which promotions have worked well in the past. So that's an example of being able to leverage existing data to perhaps answer a current question. Or another kind of measurement that I think is really interesting these days is customer lifetime value. And customer lifetime value is a really interesting topic. In fact, we have another YouTube video from a guest lecture we did with Evan Oster from Cymark on that topic. So if you're interested in learning more about customer lifetime value, please do see that other video. It is in our YouTube channel. But the reason why customer lifetime value is so interesting is because that's another example of a measurement that we may need to make that is going to come from existing data. That is, I'm not going to do a survey and ask people how much money they're going to spend with brand X in the future, right? That would be ridiculous. So what we're going to do instead is look at what which customers have behaved in certain ways that has allowed us to predict their future, their actual value to a brand in terms of how much money they spend. So looking at the historical data to say what attributes, for example, indicate whether or not somebody's going to have a higher customer lifetime value or a lower customer lifetime value. So a lot of that type of measurement now can come from existing databases. Now, what a lot of people will say is, in terms of saying, okay, but when do I use surveys? A lot of times people will say, use the survey when you need to know why. So if you need to know why somebody is doing something, you're probably not going to get that from Google Analytics or from customer database type information. So there are definitely cases where I still want to do surveys. I still need to ask questions because that variable is not going to exist in my e-commerce database or my customer analytics database. So there are cases where I still need to do surveys, but I have to really be careful because there are a lot of databases out there these days. In a single organization, it's not uncommon for there to be many different sources of data. So when we have a new project come in, we have to take that pause to say, is this a measurement that I'm going to take using self-reported data? Or am I going to try to do the analysis leveraging existing customer data or Google Analytics or other databases? The reason why this is also important is because as a profession, there is somewhat of a tendency to over-rely on self-reported data. And we know that self-reported data is problematic. Yes, it's great to get at the why. Why did you make this purchase? Why do you prefer brand A to brand B? Sometimes it can be really great to ask those questions. But we also know that there are a lot of things that are hard for people to accurately self-report. So there are known issues with things like acquiescence bias and social desirability bias. And also we just know that people tend to rationalize things more than may be true. So if we ask people even why they bought something, they're probably going to give us a reason that's a little bit more rational than their actual driver, the actual reason why they made that purchase. We know that people are irrational. We know that we make decisions that are more swayed by things like brand or celebrity endorsement than we would like to admit. So there are certain things that are hard for people to self-report. So that's why this question is so important of, if I do have a project where I need measurement data, where I need to make a measurement about customer attitudes or behaviors, yeah, a survey is definitely one of our options. But we know that there are limitations in terms of the quality of survey data. We know there are issues where it can be hard for people to give us honest information, even though they may want to. And frankly, we're also dealing with this extra issue these days where survey response rates are really low. And so that can be problematic. So if I'm trying to understand a target market and less than 1% of the people I reach out to in that target market give me their information, that does raise some data quality concerns. So I have to be cautious about that as well. So is there a way for me to leverage other data sources that I have in the organization to take that measurement? Again, customer databases collect tons of variables these days. We can see whether or not they responded to specific promotions or events, etc. In some cases, we can see how customers have evolved over time. We can look at relationships between, say, customer support calls and renewal rates. There's all sorts of great things that we can capture from actual behavioral data as opposed to relying on people to self-report. So again, I love surveys. Surveys are awesome, but there are other data sources that we have available to us now, and I want to encourage everybody to say, for a specific project, what is going to be my best source? So again, if I'm looking to measure customer attitudes and behaviors, I may be able to get some awesome data by looking at CRM data, e-commerce data. Maybe I have a loyalty card program, so I have loyalty behavior. Google Analytics, scanner data for retailers. Of course, surveys too. But we have a lot of different data sources these days. So one of the things I want to make sure I do a good job of as a researcher is really making sure that I have objectively looked at my clients' needs for measurement. And before I default to doing a survey for measurement, is there a database I can leverage? And what I'm seeing in a lot of organizations these days is more collaboration between what had previously been very siloed data functions, right? In the past, market research or consumer insights was a very different department, different team than the people who would be normally working with things like the CRM database or the e-commerce database. But increasingly, organizations are integrating these functions into a broader team or even under a chief data officer umbrella. So there is more integration and more opportunities for collaboration. So it is an exciting time to be in market research and consumer insights because we get to leverage now all these new data sources. Not every project has to be about going out and getting our data by brute force. We have other options, and I just want to make sure we are all aware of what they are. All right, folks, I think that does it for me for today. I want to thank you for having this conversation and for being passionate about making sure that you are matching the right methodologies to the right client needs. And if anybody would like to continue this conversation, I'm going to share my contact information here. And please do add comments. I do reply to comments. I welcome questions on all of this. And for those of you who are in the qualitative research area or getting into the qualitative research area, I just want to let you know that on July 26th, we are starting our next session of our course on writing qualitative research reports. This is a really popular course. It's a ton of fun. It meets once a week for 4 weeks in the Research Rockstar virtual classroom, so there's no travel. And part of this class that I really love is we really get into how do we synthesize all of this unstructured data that we're getting from qualitative research. So how can I structure it and have a structured analysis approach so that I'm getting the most value out of all of that unstructured data and can use that to really do a compelling analysis and write a killer management summary. All right, folks, I think that's it for today. Thanks, and I look forward to any questions or comments.